Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Two Doomed Men podcast, the greatest, ready? The greatest podcast in the history of the country, perhaps even the world by far. I don't think anyone comes close.
What's up, Doom Nation, and welcome back. You are listening to the Two Doom Men podcast. As always, it's Scagz and yours truly, the captain, and we got another episode for you this week. What's going on, bud?
Another Wednesday, another
Yes,
stormy Wednesday. Unfortunately, another hurricane barreling into the United States and Florida. We're going to be talking a little bit about hurricanes tonight. Kamala Harris tonight, the election tonight. We are close, buddy. We're close. Less than a month.
Yeah, it is. Things are about to get real.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they are real for real.
Yeah.
You know that no joke. Things are real. People's bullets are flying over people's heads. There is a lot of people dead in North Carolina.
I just saw a video on TikTok. There's some like coastal flooding happening already. And this guy's trying to get back into his house, and he shines a light, and they open the door, and there's all this water rushing out of his house. He shines a light into the house, and there's like an 8-foot alligator sitting in his living room. It got washed into his house.
Just cannot win. He just cannot win. So our two main topics are going to be Kamala Harris's appearance on the Call Her Daddy podcast and the federal government's response kind of to Hurricane Helene, and a little bit on Trump's assassination. Some new news about that came out today. I thought we could start by shouting out Trump's GoFundMe, actually.
Yes.
For the Hurricane Helene victims. You could go to GoFundMe. I put the link in the description for our podcast episode here. If you want to go straight there and you want to donate anything to a good cause, he's already raised over $7.5 million, which is awesome. But people are pretty in trouble down there in North Carolina, our good countrymen down there, so they could use some help. So go check that out. If you have a couple dollars to spare, throw them their way, because the federal government ain't. Yeah,
Trump, as usual, doing more than the government is doing. Amazing how they didn't have to come back in from recess to send Lebanon money, but they have to come back in from recess to allocate more money to North Carolina. That's here.
Yes,
Lebanon's over there.
Yeah,
and North Carolina here, right? I know I'm dumb, but I'm right on that, right?
Yeah, you know your map, you know your geography on that one.
Okay.
Surprise. There you go. Captain Geography knows his deal.
Yep.
We'll get into that a little bit later. I know you're chomping at the bit for that one, so I'm gonna hold you back for now. We'll start off with Call Her Daddy. So while things are falling apart for Americans in North Carolina, now's a good time to go on the Call Her Daddy podcast.
Yeah, a sex show.
Yeah, and we said this last week that she had a chance to really, or Aaron McIntyre, I think, said this last week. We had one of his tweets as our tweet of the week, that she had a chance to really like grab leadership by the horns here and lead by example, and then spin this to her advantage, and she did. And she continues to not have done that. And then she goes and pours some salt in the wound of those people, perhaps, by going on Call Her Daddy while this is all going on. I actually don't think going on Call Her Daddy, though, was actually a bad move strategically, politically. I thought it was actually a pretty good move. There are a lot of people who watch that show. Now, that show, not my cup of tea, right? For those who don't know what it is a podcast. It is, I think, the most popular podcast for women in the country by Alex Cooper, and not my cup of tea. I have my criticisms of the Call Her Daddy podcast, but then I'm going to sound like a dude just mansplaining here what's wrong with Call Her Daddy's podcast. Let's just put it this way. It's not something I'd want my daughter listening to when she gets older. That being said, we talk about crazy, raunchy stuff here all the time, especially when we have the guys in here as well. So that's what it is, right? If you want to watch her whole episode with Kamala Harris, go right ahead and see what she has to say. One criticism I will have of Alex Cooper, the host, she didn't really do much preparation going into the interview with Kamala Harris. It was very much so a limited understanding of an area she doesn't really venture into often. Oh, that's like a disappointment for that.
Just shows what Kamala signed up for, that the host isn't even going to do like this type of research or get any hard-hitting questions, but also they picked this podcast for softball questions. This was a direct play to her base. Kamala does do great with the female voters. They don't care about World War III. They care about, abortion. Right. And this was the right place for her to go. And they gave her easy little softball layups. And she still kind of messed up, which is
I don't know if she
impressive.
messed up. I mean, I have one clip which we'll play here, which was the one that caught my eye. But it was a good move strategically for her campaign. She is appealing to low information voters. I'm sorry, ladies who listen to Two Doomed Men and also listen to Call Her Daddy, but in a sense, low information voters, and trying to appeal to them, to women. Her biggest base of voters is trying to appeal directly to them. Like, hey, you should come vote for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to now try and make myself look. Hey there, fellow human. Look, a normal person just like you. You fell out of a coconut tree, whatever, But there was one really interesting part, I thought, which, the captain and I, when we find hypocrisy, we love calling it out, was the most interesting question, in my opinion, that Alex Cooper asked her, that I saw at least online. So I'm taking this directly from Kamala Harris's page, and then she clipped a exchange she had with Brett Kavanaugh to the end of it as well. So I thought we could just play this and comment on all of it.
I want to take a moment, and can we try to think of any law that gives the government the power to make a decision?
I know what you're going to ask.
About a man's body.
No. Can you think of any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm happy to answer a more specific question, but
Male versus female.
Oh, thank you.
Medical procedures.
Okay. That the government has the power to make a decision about a man's body.
I thought you were asking about medical procedures that are unique to men.
I'll repeat the question. Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm not thinking of any right now, Senator.
Shame on Brett Kavanaugh. I'm sorry, man. Sometimes there's no way. There's no way that we can answer this better than a Supreme Court justice can.
Yep.
So let's just start here. How about the unmitigated gall of her to even reference this or say this again? Her administration was trying to pass vaccine mandates on the entire population of the United States of America, which includes men. So
wanna
for her
travel,
to sit here now,
want to work, do this to your body.
The OSHA mandate, which was struck down, luckily, by the Supreme Court, which Brett Kavanaugh is a member of, and he was one of the people who dissented on it. Again, she was trying to pass a law in recent memory during the Two Doomed Men doing the podcast age. I'm not talking about ancient history as well. That would have been a medical procedure that she's referencing even in questioning Brett Kavanaugh here. They tried to do that. It failed. The OSHA 100 employer thing. If your company had more than 100 people, it'd have to be mandated that you would have to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It was law for a while until it got struck down. So they did actually pass a law, the federal government, in a sense. So her federal government that she was a part of did the very thing she's now saying does not exist for men. I will go on to make the larger philosophical point here as well. What about the Selective Service Act, the draft?
Draft.
Is that not an act of the government telling a man what he can and can't do with his body?
So from firsthand experience, obviously I was not drafted. My father was drafted into Vietnam. He was drafted into the military to go fight for the army, and he had no choice. He lost the lot. They had a lottery system. He lost it. Every fourth man went to the Marines, and the rest went to the army. Luckily, he was number 3, and he didn't get turned into a grunt in the meat grinder. But if he had left, he would have been a criminal of the state. There was deserters that ran to Canada and Mexico to hide from the draft, and they were greatly disrespected.
Muhammad Ali, right? Didn't he do that? Yeah.
I think so. I believe so. Yeah. Draft. And then they disrespected all the drafted soldiers by welcoming all the deserters back into the country afterwards. But my father at the time believed you will be arrested. You will be court-martialed. There will be some type of justice brought against you for deserting your country and not showing up for the draft. So he went over there and put his life on the line to go fight a war of all wars, Vietnam.
Another BS one.
Yeah.
Least action, as he would call it. So there you go. Yeah. Again, philosophical, larger point here. There is no greater law, I'd say, that infringe that telling a man what he can or can't do with his body than literally a law saying you don't own your own body.
Yeah.
You are property of the state, and you are going to do what you're told. You're going to go fight in a war where you might be killed, right? You probably and like we've talked about on this podcast before, when they use the draft, it's almost always because the war is so unpopular that they can't get anyone to actually volunteer to do it. So it's the worst scenario for a person's freedom at all. It's like a war that no one wants to even fight in to begin with. And so you don't own yourself. You have to go into a scenario you don't want to go into, and you'll likely be killed in for the government in a sense, right? So now I've seen people make the counter argument that we haven't had a draft in 50 years or whatever. So like it's now the right wing talking point that like the draft is, in regard to her saying this thing. Yeah, but it's an active law on the books that currently exist. She's talking about what active laws right now exist that control men's bodies. This is the pinnacle of all of them.
Well, I mean, come on, Scagz. It's the fact that we figured out the answer. And exactly.
Like, you guys found a really good talking point. You can't have that.
You know what I mean? Oh, you made koala wrong. We can't allow that to happen.
Yeah. And look, I in principle disagree with the draft completely. We've talked about it here when we had ladies' night many, many years ago when they were floating out the idea of adding women to the selective service. I'm like, no, we should oppose that. We shouldn't be signing up more human beings for ownership under the government to be just thrown away at any moment on any bullshit war. Luckily, that hasn't really passed. I don't think women are eligible at the moment. That kind of got shot down at the moment. So that's a big one. Now let's have a little bit of fun, given the state of the. I hate to even say have fun, but let's have some fun with the hurricanes and whatever. So I don't know if you've seen this, Cap, but there's this guy called Lieutenant Dan. And
I saw a picture of this earlier. I had no idea what it was about.
He's the epitome of a Florida man. He lives in Tampa Bay, in the Bay, and he's in his boat, and he refuses to leave. This guy is going to get people like me and you on his side, just his pure stubbornness in the face of the government. So here's
brass balls to sell real estate.
I'm gonna go live in a minute.
Are you gonna be okay?
I'm gonna be fine.
I don't think people realize you're so close to down. I mean, you could just get off if something bad happened. You know what I mean?
I'm not going anywhere because the safest place to be is on a boat in a flood. Okay, we learned that with Noah. Everybody that stayed on land drowned. Noah and the animals lived. So I'm fine.
Do you have any animals?
No, I wish I did.
Okay.
I could use 2 females.
Well, you got all the news crews right here during the storm, so you can just, if you need anything. Everybody's worried about you.
Everybody's worried about me. Everybody wants me to get off the boat. People don't. Being that I'm tied up to the cleat on the dock there, I have secured in the concrete, which is secured to all this thing. I have a secured anchor point. I'm tied to the boat. If the tide goes up, I go up. As long as the water stays out of the boat, I'll be fine. And the wind is, it's not a tornado. It's not.
Okay, so leave Lieutenant Dan alone. He wants to stay on his boat. It's his property. This is the United States of America.
Yes.
He has a right to his property and his body. But
people
Kamala
cannot
Harris
leave well enough alone.
And he seems to know what he's talking about. He's set up. But Kamala Harris says that there are no laws on the books that can tell a man what he can and can't do with his body. I challenge you, Kamala Harris, to listen to the mayor of Tampa Bay and see what she has to say about Lieutenant Dan.
Catch up with an individual who is writing it out on his boat. He's refusing to leave. That could be an outlier case, but I've certainly seen this in storm after storm where people do write it out on their boats, which are their homes. What would you say to individuals like that who did not evacuate from zones A and B?
Well, that would probably take you right back to the statement that I made with Caitlin the other day. And we have tried so many times with that individual to get him off of that boat, and the officers will eventually just take him into custody and for his own good, because he's not going to survive in a sailboat in the bay with anywhere from 8 to 12 feet of storm surge. So,
Are you saying he would be arrested?
well, for Baker Act, for his own protective custody. And it may be past the point for that, as the winds are gusting out.
Just
there
let
right
him do
now.
it.
But those are the types
Just-
of things that we just can't have in our community. We have been warned. We know what Milton is bringing, and
The Baker Act. He is violating the Baker Act, whatever that means. The female mayor of Tampa Bay is telling a man he cannot stay in his own boat, in his own property. He is going to be thrown into a cage for defying the law of the government. So, Kamala Harris, I dare you to try and make that point. I'm being a little facetious and whatnot.
It's amazing. I wonder how many people die of overdosing drugs in Tampa every day, but this guy can't ride out a storm on his boat.
Yeah, like and I get it. Just to be real here, like I don't think he should stay in his boat during a hurricane. Probably should get the fuck out of there, right?
Yeah.
But look, like who's gonna be hurt by what he did?
Right.
Only
Just
him.
Just
Just
him.
him.
Yeah.
If he even is hurt, right? There's a couple of philosophical things. There's a funny point I'm trying to make, tie this into Kamala Harris. But boy, there is the point that the government just doesn't want you to dissent. They don't want him to dissent. Now he's become a symbol of dissent during the hurricane. They've issued the evacuation order. They're telling people what to do. And this is in Florida, too, by the way. So this isn't like it's in New York City, some Democratic stronghold or whatever. Now it's Tampa Bay, et cetera. But they don't want any dissent. They don't want a symbol of stubborn freedom there being like, I'm going to ride out of my boat, because then their orders might be defied elsewhere and etc. Now, you could make an argument of whether that's smart or dumb to do. But at the end of the day, do you see how it's
dumb. What the guy's doing is dumb. But I mean, this is his choice. He's the only one that's going to get hurt here. It reminds me a lot of at the beginning of COVID when California was really going crazy. Some guy decided to troll the police, and he put a mannequin on a paddle board with a fishing rod and just let him drift out to sea. And like 35 police officers showed up to get this man the mannequin to come back in so they could arrest him for violating COVID restrictions. You were supposed to stay 6 feet away, wear a mask, this and that. He was out in the middle of the ocean on a paddle boat, and they wanted to arrest him because he defied the orders.
I'm now even just thinking in Lieutenant Dan, which is hysterical, by the way, that he's called Lieutenant Dan. If anybody's seen the Forrest Gump movie, this guy is actually missing one of his legs as well.
I was just going to say, is he missing it?
Yes,
okay.
He's missing
Even
a leg
better.
and all. One leg and all.
Now I'm really rooting for him.
So I don't know if the terminology is the Streisand effect, but even in this regard, like if the government's goal really is to just save as many lives as possible and get people to follow the evacuation order because it's the right thing to do,
right,
etc., the best thing they actually probably could do in this regard is just ignore this guy.
Yeah.
All right. Because the more they focus on him and try and like crush him under their boot,
he'll get a backing.
Assholes like me are going to get annoyed because of the principle of it. Right. And then the more people are going to be like, fuck him, I'm staying too, etc. Right. So like, just if your goal actually was to just, so again, I don't know the mayor of Tampa Bay or anything like that. I'm not saying she's a nefarious actor. I really don't know. Maybe this is some sort of indoctrinated statism in her mind. But like they never go about things the most effective or efficient way, even within their own logic.
Just
leave the guy alone and ignore it.
Yeah,
right. And you won't get anybody pushing back against you in this.
In the fact alone that this hurricane is going to be so big, no matter what, this is not a mass casualty event. I guess. Well, I mean, like 130 some people died in like North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
So I would consider that like a mass casualty.
Well, this is now another one we're talking about now, Milton.
Right. No, I understand. So now we're down here in Florida. Regardless, this is probably going to be another mass casualty event. It's a giant category 4 hurricane that is going to destroy Tampa. People are going to get hurt. People are going to die. Why are we wasting resources, time, effort, airtime coming out with these totalitarian statements for one man who is defying the rules when 100 other people are going to die anyway? We are wasting resources arresting a man who wants to stay put instead of bringing those resources to some old woman who can't get down the stairs and get to safety in time. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's because they can make an example of him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And now he's become like a viral sensation, and now they could go and make an example of a viral sensation as a warning to anybody else who might be thinking of doing the same thing Lieutenant Dan is doing. So I'm sure that's kind of the psychology or the thought process there. Boy, I didn't think we were going to get like 20 minutes out of Lieutenant Dan or whatever it's been. But yeah, you see what I mean? How that one, I knew that'd probably strike a nerve with you even.
Yeah, and you know what? I only saw a picture of Lieutenant Dan on Instagram maybe 15 minutes before we started the show. I had no idea what anybody was talking about.
Yeah. So leave Lieutenant Dan alone. Let him just do his thing. All right.
Let him be the Florida man he is.
Yeah. Let's move on to just what's been going on regarding the Hurricane Helene in general. And let's start off by a tweet, which I mean, it's a little bit stale now. It's like a week later. But at the time when this was sent out, I mean, I was seeing red. I'm sure you were seeing red, Captain. But this is from...
I've only been seeing red on this topic.
This is from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and this is on October 4th. And he says the U.S. is at the forefront of humanitarian response to the growing crisis in Lebanon, announcing nearly $157 million in assistance today. We are committed to supporting those in need and delivering essential aid to displaced civilians, refugees, and the communities hosting them. Boy, now again, it might be a little bit stale. We're a week later here recording, but this tweet was sent out at the exact same time that the people in North Carolina were at their direst point of need. Many of them stranded. Many, are dead. Many just volunteers are using like mules and things like that to get to people, try and get them out of their homes where they're stranded. The federal government has had a really slow, terrible response to this. They've promised that would be great. $750 through
per household
to each person, kind of like what they did in Maui.
No, it's not. It's per household. So if you have 4 people in your house, you only get $750.
Yeah. And they've earmarked some other money like repair the highways in the future that have been destroyed there. And Biden and Harris did tour the place via helicopter. But my God, the optics on where they even made a statement that they essentially don't have enough money at the moment through FEMA to kind of handle all this.
Yeah, because they've spent $660 million on immigration.
It's like they're trying to piss everyone off. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right? The optics of on one day you tell us we can't really spend that much money to help everybody, Americans in North Carolina. The next day, the Secretary of State and then Kamala Harris, a day after this, tweets almost the exact same thing, that you are going to send $157 million in assistance to a foreign country and in supporting them and delivering essential aid to displaced civilians, refugees, and the communities hosting them. It's almost the exact same scenario he's citing that's happened to the people in North Carolina, almost verbatim. Displaced civilians and refugees, right? In a sense, the hurricane happened, the people are displaced. They could be refugees now within North Carolina and other areas. And so it's almost like they're using the same language that describes the situation that the Americans in North Carolina are in, and they're talking about Lebanon. Now, that even goes beyond the point that the reason why the Lebanese are in such a predicament is because the United States of America's federal government is funding Israel, which is blowing them the fuck up at this very moment. So they're creating this scenario for the Lebanese, and then they're giving money to them as well. That's my part of the rant for now, Cap. I'm sorry. I got triggered when I saw this again. I'll let you say your piece now because I know this is really more your spot.
I mean, I am furious. And, my mother reminded me, George Bush had the same reaction to Hurricane Katrina. Let all those people die. We couldn't get our shit together to save, what did it hit? New Orleans, Louisiana, whatever, Hurricane Katrina.
There's a lot of good parallels between that and this. I'll make a point while I remember right here. The National Guard in Louisiana was off in Iraq fighting, in the Iraq War. The National Guard in North Carolina here in Tennessee was sent out a couple days before this to go over to the Middle East because of the tensions that have been drawn. So a lot of good parallels there.
Yeah. I mean, so this isn't the first botched hurricane they have. And you know what? I'm not going to be surprised by next week, when we're talking about the exact same thing taking place, but in Florida. I'm calling it now. We could bring a receipt. I pray to God I'm wrong and that Ron DeSantis has, shit covered down there and they're going to get the help they need. I know Trump already has people on the ground in his housing, linemen and stuff, and utility workers in some of his resorts down there. But I mean, this administration is such a disastrous joke. The people who vote for Kamala truly want the worst for this country. They don't care that World War III is around the corner. They genuinely are not smart enough to understand what, this nuclear disaster we're on the brink of actually is. They just want to make sure they can kill babies in the 9th month. And then you go ahead and you look at what they're doing. There's plenty of Democrats in North Carolina. You showed me the election margins. They're razor thin. They got to be higher now, at least.
Oh, we'll get to that. I have that tweet queued up for later.
Yeah. Trump was down there before Kamala. Trump was on the ground. Then there's reports of FEMA messing up. Then there's reports of FEMA stopping other people from helping. It's this weird conspiracy of this clusterfuck that's going on down there. But hang
on, you made a good point there. Not only has their response been lackluster, but they've impeded other people, volunteers, from being able to help themselves. And I'll take this moment. I'm flying the anarchist colors here tonight. That people will say, "Oh, an anarchist society is not possible. What would happen in the event that there was a natural disaster? Everyone would be every man for himself, and everybody would be fucked." Well, here you go. In modern day, when there isn't an anarchist society, the federal government has been shit out of fuck to help everyone. But who were the first people to rise to the occasion to help? Voluntarily.
Rednecks from Appalachia.
Your neighbor, you're right, voluntarily did so. So again, let's not get too autistic.
But this is the America Last policy, and it's gotta go. We now have Americans in several states that are misplaced refugees dying, and every day this fucking administration allows hundreds and thousands of illegals from all around the world to just march over the border with no problem, nothing at all. And they're given debit cards, they're given phones. There's 150 something beautiful hotels in New York City that are sold out to the brim, housing immigrants, but yet who are here illegally. They lied to get into this country. Yeah, I'm seeking asylum. I might have murdered 3 people in Venezuela, but I'm here now. Let me in. And then they get shipped up to New York, and they get put up in a hotel room and are given all this money. Meanwhile, Democrats of North Carolina, who have been voting blue for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, have no house, no electricity, no food, no water. And Kamala Harris goes, "Yeah, you'll get $750. If you just go on, turn on your phone that is missing, go online without any internet. Hopefully you got a little Starlink connection, and you could fill out a form, and we'll get back to you in 3 to 6 weeks. 3 to 6 weeks if you're going to get that $750 check." Not to mention that North Carolina is a swing state. I completely believe that what FEMA is doing right now is 100% election interference. North Carolina had a very good chance of going red. I know the razor thin margins, but I think a little bit further south and stuff, it was probably going to turn red. Now these people aren't going to vote. We got to figure out what's going to happen for election for these people, or are we just going to forget about them like we forgot about the people of Maui?
Right.
Because they also burned to the ground. All those Democrats out there that have been voting blue forever, their whole house got burnt up because they didn't mysteriously have a blue roof, and they got $700 that they're still living on.
Yeah, Captain's going straight into the Garrett territory. I love it. But let's talk about what let's get a little bit into like punditry, or just talk about votes and the election coming up. I saw this tweet the other day. And it says that Kevin McCarthy, who I can't stand, made a great point, though. It says Hurricane Helene could lose Trump the 2024 election. He asked why no one's doing anything to protect Western North Carolina votes. Those 40,000 votes, there has to be a court action to ensure that those people get their votes counted. So I saw that. I'm like, that's a goddamn good point. I'm like, I wonder what the polls say about North Carolina, right? Like, how close are the polls in North Carolina? So I went on 538.com, which is a polling website, and it has Trump at the time, as of October 5th, it had Trump ahead by 0.08 in North Carolina. Those 40,000 votes, they could definitely swing 0.08 of the election within North Carolina. Now, let's say Trump was going to win North Carolina by his 0.08. Now those 40,000, let's say, let's be gracious. We're assuming that the 40,000 people are going, like, that demographic of that region is going to vote for Trump predominantly. Right, I assume they are, right? But let's say that not all 40,000 of them are going to vote for Donald Trump. Let's say 25,000 of them are going to vote for Donald Trump, right? That still will probably shift the election in a state like North Carolina, that 0.08%.
Yeah.
If the polling places are literally, we're within a month here, folks. It's not that far away.
Right.
I'm not sure how long it's going to take to rebuild a polling station if it's been completely destroyed by
How are you going to get people there and back?
How are you going to get them
got
there?
nothing to begin with.
Where even are they going to go?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
these
where
people don't even have a change of clothes.
Now, those people cannot vote for Donald Trump. Within North Carolina, that 0.08 gets erased. Kamala Harris wins. She gets the Electoral College votes by North Carolina that she would not have gotten otherwise. Perhaps those North Carolina Electoral College votes put her just over the edge in the election, and she ends up winning. So it could very well be that the hurricane could have determined the election there. Now, it remains to be seen in the next 3 or 4 weeks here how this shakes out.
And think now of all the voters that are definitely going to vote for Trump in Florida who are not going to make it to the polls either.
Yeah, right.
It's just
same scenario could happen there. Sure. I don't think that Florida will swing blue,
right?
Just because of this. It's not exactly a 1-to-1 comparison. It could,
right? But it is now several thousand people that are not going to be able to get out there and vote.
Sure, but people will still vote, and I'm confident Florida will still vote for Trump, and Trump will get the Electoral College votes of Florida. It's in a sense, North Carolina is a swing state. It's a swing state that's had its demographic physically now blocked from possibly being able to vote on election day.
Exactly. And
so real quick, does that explain perhaps the lackluster federal government response? I know some people want to go down the rabbit hole of they sent the hurricane there to blow everyone up and kill them. I was telling you and Garrett, I'm the old fashioned. I don't think the government can control the weather, unlike AOC and the climate change cultists who do think they can control the weather. But could this have happened? And now they're like,
this works.
This could help.
And so now, since we've been talking about gamesmanship, I wonder if the Trump card and Trump's plan, because he announced the Madison Square Garden rally, is, I think, with this going on, maybe Trump loses North Carolina, but what if he wins New York? I mean, this is something we've talked about.
Yeah. I think he's trying to win New York, definitely.
I definitely think he is, too.
I don't think he's going to give up on North Carolina. He's literally he's gone there and tried to help. And that's one of Trump's best traits, I think. When people are in trouble, he actually physically shows up and shows them that he cares. Whether he actually does care or not, honestly, besides the point, the fact that's what politicians are supposed to do. They're supposed to, you're supposed to use your leverage over them to get them to give you stuff or to help you or do things for you. So for that's good. I don't want to let one other person get away here as well. We hate them in a bipartisan fashion on Two Doom Men, folks. There are no words I can use for Lindsey Graham on this podcast that would not get us in trouble. Let's just put it that way.
Wait, what was that?
Lindsey Graham. There are no words I could use on this podcast for my thoughts on Lindsey Graham that could not get us in trouble. But he's the person from North Carolina. Let's see what he had to say.
You can thank Donald Trump and Elon Musk for that. I've been going all over South Carolina like most people. I hadn't slept much. But look what's going on in Israel. Our friends in Israel are surrounded by people that want to kill them. destroy them, a second Holocaust in the making. And Biden says, be proportional. What is the proportional response to people who want to kill you and your family? They're running out of ammunition in Israel.
How about the people who are dying right now, not about the people who want to kill our families?
Remember when Dave Smith
I hate this. I hate these people. I hate them all. The idea as an elected official in America, for you to sit there and go, oh, North Carolina's gone. What should we do? Send money to Israel because there's people dying in Israel and there's going to be another Holocaust if we don't. But what about the people in Israel? No, send people money in Lebanon too. Forget North Carolina. Only send. This is, once again, the America Last agenda. This is the problem this country has. Our elected officials hate us. Scagz, you said something in a text that I try to remind everybody all the time. If you think you hate the corporate media, you don't hate them enough. And I apply that to 98% of every politician that walks this fucking earth right now. We all collectively do not hate them enough. Somebody in our group chat said, how can Kamala get up there and with a straight face tell everybody, oh, your whole world just got destroyed. You live in the greatest country in the world. America doesn't need to be made great again. It already is great. We're going to send you $750. We're going to send Israel $700 billion because they hate us. All of them, Lindsey Graham, they all hate us. And the only reason why they haven't killed us all is because they need us to do the work to make the money. Once they could figure out how to get us to do the work and they keep all the money, that's what they'll do next.
Yeah. Hey, I've looked around North Carolina, but have you seen what's going on in Israel? Imagine, boy, I can't imagine being, I already can't stand the guy, but imagine being his constituent and hearing that. Like, hey, and your house is destroyed, your kids are dead, maybe, your kids got washed away in a flood, and this guy goes, hey, well, have you seen what's happening in Israel? Blah, 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 blah. I was going to make the point before. Remember when Dave Smith interviewed RFK Jr. and he asked him, hey, are you concerned with the level of influence that Israel has over American politics? And RFK had that really long, 45-second pause where he didn't say anything. And then he later was like, well, I don't know enough about it because I'm not in politics at the moment. I'd like to have played that video for RFK now. And do you think that's a normal thing to say in such a scenario? To hey, I know my constituents are literally dead and drowning, and they're my constituents, but have you seen what's going on the other side of the planet in this conflict? My God. I mean, that's an example of it right there. Obviously, he's completely purchased by the Israel lobby. Senator Graham there. And that's his concern. That is his primary concern. I hope that gets shared a lot around now, and everyone in North Carolina sees that, and that really impacts his ability to win his next election. Because if there's somebody who needs to get voted out of fucking office, it's Lindsey
voted
Graham.
out of the planet.
He's been there for a long time as well.
I would like to meet people from North Carolina right now that were like pro Kamala, pro Israel, pro Ukraine, pro the thing.
Pro Lindsey Graham people. Can I meet them? What are they?
Just like all the pro Adam Schiff people, right? Yeah. And just be like, what do you think? Like, you got, you had the Ukraine flag on the back of your car until it was obliterated by the storm and blew away. But you were all for sending all this money and you're all for open borders. What do you think now when you are shit out of luck? You're not voting for Donald Trump. You would love if this was Trump country and all Trump supporters were sitting here. Of course, you wouldn't want to send any aid to those types of people, but you supported all of this. And this is the actions of what you voted for. This is what people voted for. I stopped using that phrase, and I need to bring it up more. I used to get into conversations with people that I would work at with different jobs and stuff, and they couldn't believe what was going on. And I would just remind them, this is what people voted for. Here you go, America. You anti-elected Biden. You allowed a coup to take place with Kamala Harris becoming the new presidential candidate. And here's how we're handling things. You voted for this.
Certain people voted for it. Not everyone. Yeah.
Well, enough people voted
Sure.
for it.
I won't collectively guilt everyone, because there are plenty of Trump voters in North Carolina who didn't vote for this.
Yeah.
So it's not their fault. All right, let's shift gears because we're running out of time here. Trump went on Andrew Schultz's Flagrant One podcast. Now, this is great, I think.
Fantastic.
Within our own episode of contrasting Kamala on Call Her Daddy and then Trump on Flagrant One. And I suggest, again, just like I did with Call Her Daddy, go watch it if you want. It's interesting. But I watched most of it. Captain, I know you did as well. Trump gave probably the most meat and potatoes he has given so far on his assassination attempts. Right now,
before we play this, though, I would like to go ahead and listen to these. Now, these were comedians interviewing Trump, so it's a lighthearted interview, but they did try to get answers out of him.
Yeah.
And Trump sat back and he was surprised at how good all the questioning was. Go look at what took place on Call Her Daddy, and it was all softball pitches and giggling and no great policy talk. And I mean, through their big abortion talk, we picked it apart within the first 10, 20 minutes of this podcast. So I digress.
I will make a quick point, not to shit on the ladies too much, but if you go look at what the top 3 podcasts are for men, it's Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Lex Friedman. All very interesting, in-depth, thought-provoking, intelligent podcasts with conversations. For women, it's Call Her Daddy, and I forgot what the other 2 ones, but like relationship, sex, and meaningless things. So I love my ladies, but maybe we need to rethink our priorities here in the moment. But anyway, I thought this was just interesting because it, again, is Trump giving the most he has given on his election, which he hasn't talked about much, like, at least in the way, Captain, that we have. Like, we're convinced it was the deep state. It was the government. That was our first reaction that we dove into this, right? Trump hasn't said that whatsoever. He's never even really alluded to that much at all until perhaps this and perhaps a little bit over the weekend. But anyway, this is 4.5 minutes. I do want to watch the whole thing, and then I went to the full episode after this to play another minute there, which I have it set at that exact moment because Trump said something that I thought was the most interesting part of this entire thing, but it was hard for them to pin him down. He kept trying to change the subject and talk about something else when they kept trying to ask him this question. Interesting in of itself. So I'll stop talking. Let's play it and let's hear what he has to say.
So here's the break. So you have this shooter and you have another shooter, right? Yeah. So this shooter had 3 or so cell phones. The FBI has never gotten them opened. Wow. The other shooter, 3 apps, they call them. And I believe they were foreign-based apps, from what I understand.
Oh, wow.
They haven't opened them, and they're foreign-based. And, you hear all about Iran, because I was rough with Iran, but I want to see Iran do great. Yeah. But I want to stop all the killing and all this. And I was rough on Iran, and they supposedly have a hit on me. In fact, I think it takes great courage for you people to be interviewing me, because it could be now, Yeah.
Well, we didn't know that before we got in here.
No, if you would have known that, you might not have done this.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, this is a good way of me getting the interview to be shorter. All of a sudden, he's going to say, okay, that's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Go see my daughter.
Yeah. They have 3 apps, and foreign-based, 2 of them, maybe 3 of them are foreign-based. They haven't opened them yet. Why wouldn't you open them when you hear about Iran or when you hear about, foreign? And the other one had 6 cell phones, and they haven't opened. Now, it's very hard to open a cell phone. Only Apple can do it in theory, unless you have somebody. But they had no problem getting the J6 people's cell phones open. They opened their cell phones very quickly. We have 2 countries in a way. What's happening here is very bad. It's very dangerous. We almost had one because I had the greatest economy in the history of our country, and people were coming together. We almost had one. But we really do have 2 right now, and it's a shame because I think we'll get them together. Success will bring us together, but they should get those phones opened. And, when there's an assassination attempt on a former president who's now, I'm proud to say, leading in all the polls against the Democrat, I don't know which one is running. You don't know what the hell's going on. I'm the only one that had to run against 2. I run against 2 Democrats But this is a first. We create a lot of firsts. Usually you run against somebody. Here I run. I had the debate. I was way up on him.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, let's put, this is like with Dana White, a fighter. So you're fighting and the one guy's getting killed. And they say, oh, that's okay. Let's put in another fighter to finish it off. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're fighting. You say, hey, wait a minute. I have a brand new fighter in here.
WWE.
I spent $150 million on beating Biden. And then all of a sudden I hear that they're going to overthrow him. It was a coup. I mean, it really was. But I would like them to open up the apps and find out what's in there. And so he had six cell phones. Who has 6 cell phones?
Mm-hmm.
Having 6 cell phones is weird. I have cell phones. If I ever have 2, it's like a lot.
Yeah.
He had 6 cell phones. Why does he have them? And why haven't they opened up those cell phones?
So if you had to
and
guess,
it's different. You know, if you're a drug dealer, I think it's terrible in many ways, but I guess from another standpoint, Apple, the primary group, people buy those phones because they will never open them for any reason. But they got them open on J6. You know, they opened up their phones, but they don't open. And this is big stuff. This is an assassination attempt. And it could involve other countries.
There was that San Bernardino shooter that they hacked. That FBI was able to hack into the phone. Apple didn't give it up, but they were able to hack.
Okay, just to make your point here, Captain, the fact that Andrew Schultz even remembered that is fucking awesome. He's talking about the San Bernardino shooter from years ago who, you know, it was like a terrorist attack. He shot up, I think, his workplace.
Yeah, didn't that
Apple didn't want to unlock his phone because they didn't want to set the precedent with the government of like then the government's going to come to everyone has an iPhone. The government's going to then come to Apple for every single person to like spy on them or open up their phone. So again, that makes your point there as well. It's great that Andrew Schultz even remembered that and knew that. Okay, what were we going to say?
No, I was going to say, I kind of remember that story. I think we actually covered it, and we were in favor of what Apple was doing, probably.
Yeah. I don't think I still hold that position to this day. I don't think they should be kowtowing to the government, even in extreme circumstances. Like
but it is funny, you know. He's sitting there talking about J6, and all those phones got opened up 1, 2, 3 because we have two countries right now. We have two countries.
Let him keep going. There's another minute here, and then maybe 30 seconds on the next video after that or so. But I want everyone to hear it all.
Some people in the world, very few, that have an ability to sometimes be able to hack in.
Got it.
Very rarely, actually.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing when you think that with all the genius, you almost can't do it. But Apple has a key, and the key is open. I mean, they can do it immediately.
Yeah.
But they don't do it, and they don't do it. And that's one of the reasons that, like, I hate to say it, drug lords feel very confident that they'll never be exposed. And they use their cell phones, their Apple phones, and maybe it's that way with other companies. I don't know. They have Samsung, they have other companies, but it's very hard. Apple's very strong on that. But when it comes to the assassination of a president, leading candidate, former president, all that, I think the rules have to go out and they have to open those things, then they have to find out. And
in terms of national security,
some people would say you have to either punish Apple or you have to get somebody that can do it. But in terms of national security, so the one guy has 6 phones, lots of messages to people. Who are those people he's calling when he's hiding behind a bush?
Okay, so I will disagree in principle with Trump there, although he does make a good point. Like in this extreme scenario, perhaps we should be opening the phone to look at it. I will just disagree with him in principle because that's what the government always wants. They want that slippery slope, and as soon as you give it to them, then they'll be opening up everybody's phone throughout the entire country. So there is one other part now. The reason why this is broken up again is because Trump was slippery
weaving.
On this.
He was weaving and wobbling. What did he say?
I skipped over that. So I now skipped over all of them talking about the weaving and whatnot. He's talking about how he talks to people and the weaving thing. How he could go from one end of his conversation to another and then come back later and all this stuff. Very funny, very interesting in of itself. But we don't got time for that. I'm trying to stick on the assassination stuff here because that's where the news is, in my opinion.
Yeah, you really weaved away answering my question twice.
Brilliant.
So
I don't even want to know the answer anymore.
I lost interest. We'll weave back. Let's weave back to his question. Okay. This is where it started. So we'll weave back to it. I sort of hate answering it because I don't want to give any false identities. I don't want to do anything having to do with creating something that isn't there. You would look at Iran. Iran has an open threat out for me, and that's bad.
I don't want to say anything in a sense. He's admitting that his words carry weight.
Yeah.
Right. And if he were to say what me and you have said, or me, you, and Garrett have said, or what me, you, and Sean Chris have said, the government tried to kill me. He's admitting that his words have weight. And if he says that, it opens up the Pandora's box. I think that's fucking fascinating that he admitted that he's holding back in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And what he really wants to say. Now you can compare that to what he was just saying in the part before that, that there's two countries and we should open the phones, and why aren't they opening up the phone, and blah, blah, blah. So in a sense, wink, wink, nod, nod. But then at the same time, I can't really just outright say what I think.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that you took it that way, because the way I was taking it a little bit as, let's say for the sake of argument, FBI, Secret Service, CIA is doing their job, the bare minimum, upholding the law. Okay, we'll give them just the bare minimum here. I feel like when you're on Trump's level, Biden's level, Obama's level, Pelosi's level, whatever, when something like this takes place and there obviously is some type of assassination, whether some type of an attempt that leads to an investigation, whether the FBI is doing its job or not, I'm pretty sure you're being coached behind the scenes to not release evidence on a comedian's podcast either. You know what I mean? Like, Trump might very well know, like, ABC tried to do this.
Time and place.
Yeah, and like, it's not the place to be like, Gavin Newsom tried to kill me, you know, like,
right. Yeah,
I know YouTube. I'm not saying I'm not spreading
We
this
get it.
information. We have no evidence. Gavin Newsom did nothing. I just used his name.
Yeah, so I just thought that was fascinating. He seems to have thoughts that he doesn't want to just. Donald Trump isn't the type to
Keep it close to the chest.
Be careful about what he says.
Yeah.
He's not. Right?
Yeah.
He can.
He's like me, guns blazing.
Whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
he says outrageous shit all the time, but not in this regard. He won't.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, this is his life. Yeah.
That's it. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to even go on a rant or anything like that. I'm just
Very
gonna
good
leave
point.
People to ponder why. Now, let's end it with this last bit of an article by Lee Smith, and it says the FBI entraps another fake assassin. Now, in case you're wondering, who's Lee Smith? Is he some crazy person? Well, I sent this to Professor Giordano, who we just had on a few episodes ago, and he was like, "Oh, I know Lee Smith, and I completely trust Lee Smith's reporting." So, 2 attempts on the life of former president, less than 2 months apart. It's unprecedented, blah, blah, blah. According to the Trump campaign, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence recently briefed the Republican candidate on a real and specific threats from Iran to assassinate him in an effort to destabilize and sow chaos in the U.S. The Secret Service was alerted to the threat before the July 13th attempt on Trump's life and reportedly increased his security, blah, 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 blah. There is little doubt the Iranians are targeting Trump as former intelligence officials. The Iranians are promiscuous. The Trump enforced sanctions against them. Okay. It's spinning the story about how Trump has been combative with the Iranians. The Islamic Republic definitely has it out for Trump, but it seems this most recent Iranian plot to kill the Republican candidate was hatched by the FBI. Last month, the Department of Justice announced it had charged a Pakistani national with ties to Iran in connection to a plot to assassinate a politician or U.S. government official on U.S. soil. According to reports, Trump was the target. The suspect, Asif Merchant, entered the country in April and was arrested on July 12th as he prepared to leave the country. It appeared that Merchant was the Iranian threat the Secret Service was briefed on before the July 13th rally in Butler, PA. The FBI arranged his entry into the U.S., according to an August Twitter post from Fox correspondent Bill Malugin. Merchant was admitted into the U.S. via parole for significant public benefit when Customs and Border Patrol encountered him at the airport in Texas after he flew in from overseas. The sponsor of his parole, Malugin says, was the FBI's Dallas airport for security interests. Malugin sources told the FBI had intelligence on Merchant before he arrived in the U.S. and needed him to physically come into the country to develop the case on him and arrest him, and that if they had arrested him at Customs, they would not have been able to gather evidence and information about his plot. So I suggest everyone go read this article. I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing. You know, you understand the gist of it. The FBI brought a guy from the Middle East to the United States who was planning to assassinate Donald Trump to then entrap him and
let him loose so then they could build the case.
Build the case on him that he was trying to assassinate a politician. Now, wow, there was a lot there, right? The fact that they even do shit like that. Now I have a modern day example I've cited many times on this show. How back in the day, the FBI was fucking famous for entrapping young Muslim men, during the terror wars, and then using that not only as justification, like to put a notch on their belt that they did something, right? But then they used those things as further justification for why the terror wars needed to keep going. Look at all these terrorists we're catching, right? But they were the one who were radicalizing the terrorists that whole time. Not every single one, but a lot of them, and then arresting them. This was the same thing they did to the Gretchen Whitmer people, right, that tried to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah.
They tried to radicalize them, and a lot of the guys were like, hey, we're not really interested in kidnapping the governor, and they were antagonizing them to try and...
Was that the one where basically everybody was an informant informing on each other?
Like 14 out of 16 dudes were FBI agents.
Yeah.
This is what they do. Now, again, here's where me and you might go off the rails, right? Like, they could have just let the guy did it. Right? Like, they could have brought him over. No one knows about this shit at the moment, really, what they were doing here behind the scenes. Maybe they just let the guy fucking do it. And they brought him over. And then later they'd be like, he was known to us. We had him on a list. We just weren't able, to get him. This is crazy. My last point is going to be that when they try and radicalize these young Muslim men, they don't tell them, hey, America, with our blue jeans and our rock and roll, don't you want to blow up a bunch of innocent civilians or kill people? No, they bring foreign policy grievances to them. Hey, President Trump killed Qasem Soleimani. Don't you want to get revenge for that? That was a foreign policy decision. Hey, the United States has bases in the Holy Land in Saudi Arabia. Isn't this an affront to your religion? Don't you want to kill some people in America for that? Like, in order to radicalize these young Muslim guys, they cite our foreign policy.
Yeah.
Not the story that they tell everyone. They hate us because of our freedom.
They hate us because they ain't us.
They want to kill all the Jews or whatever it is that they tell you, right? Like, no, it's literally when they are radicalizing them, it's like, hey, they are literally citing our foreign policy objectives and things we've done to them. That's what makes people want to commit terrorism, isn't it? Right? Here's an example of it as well. I don't know, Cap, what else do you think about this one?
No, it's wild to me. I'm not really surprised. The FBI, the CIA is behind most of this stuff. This is the deep state. Right there. Deep state takes care of things like this, where they would even cook up the idea to let this guy come here and let him loose so then they could start building the case. How about no case, just nip it in the bud? But they need those notches on the belt, like you said,
How about we also don't enact foreign policies that makes these guys want to then come around and kill us? Because again, these motherfuckers, they don't give a shit about blue jeans
I'm starting
and
to
rock
think,
and roll. They don't at all. They're on their side of the planet. They don't give a fuck.
The entire purpose of foreign policy is to agitate, create war, create adversarial people. Like, I don't think like foreign policy
keep the military industrial complex.
Yeah, I don't think like foreign policy anymore is to like create policy between nations. I think it's just to stir the shit. That's why like when Ron Swanson said, my idea of the federal government's just one guy in a room and he has the nuclear codes and a button and he does nothing else but wait for the call to use them. No more federal government, just one guy in control of the nukes.
I'd be fine with that. Yeah, man. This is you know what this is, dude? This is what Ron Paul said, blowback. Right? Like, this is blowback. This is foreign policy. People don't like it. They then want to commit acts of terrorism against you because of it. On top of that, we're literally helping facilitate the process of bringing them over here to do it.
We had a 20-year war that created countless terrorists. Now we're back in the Middle East on the brink of World War III, on the brink of nuclear destruction. We're only creating more terrorists. That's why we're funding Israel. That's why we're funding Lebanon. That's why we're funding Gaza, so we could just pick and choose who we're going to radicalize for the next 20-year war. Or, who's going to be the new bad guy once this bad guy's once Hamas is no longer the scary people. It went from Al-Qaeda to ISIS to now Hamas. Who's next? Whoever we're funding now.
Yes, good point. Citing Dave Smith there. So that's it, folks. I think we'll do some tweets of the week, and
Yes,
then
sir.
we'll wrap it up here after that. We got a couple. I'll start off with
One's a video. You see, I marked it.
No, good for you. Good job. All right, so my first one's from Daily Roman Updates, and it says the strong did what they could, and the weak suffered what they must. And what is it in reference to? Great Britain News tweeted, Britain's native red squirrels beat out invading greys in a fight for survival. And it's a photo of a red squirrel in
beautiful
with the sword. I thought that was pretty funny. All right, let's see what Captain's got here.
From at Base Torba, it is a picture of a military chopper. The family is on the roof, and there's a flood going on. That's why they're on the roof. Yay, the government's here to help. And then the helicopter dumps a bunch of illegals on their roof.
Yeah, this reminds me of, there's another meme where it's like a person's drowning and they're reaching up, it's like, hey, government, help me, and then the government stands up and gives them a high five, and then they end up drowning. Yeah, that's
this is basically what the government's doing right now.
Yeah. All right, my next one is from CNN anchor Caitlin Collins, who says, an interesting note from the new Jack Smith filing. He argues that the FBI experts have mapped out what Donald Trump was doing on his phone during the Capitol riot, and that at trial, a forensic examiner could testify about logs that show Trump was using his phone, and in particular, was using the Twitter application consistently throughout the day after he returned from the Ellipse speech.
Oh, no. The fact that they're still going on about this is nauseating, but all right.
The insinuation here is that Donald Trump was doing something bad because Donald Trump was on his phone.
Yeah.
Donald fucking Trump, who was at the time was on Twitter all day long, every single day, tweeting hundreds of times throughout the week. She's saying him being on his phone on Twitter during January 6th is evidence of something. What? I don't even know, because she never even explicitly says what it's evidence of. But it's bad. Donald Trump was on his phone during January 6th, and that's the fucking case cracker.
He must have been watching the pee-pee video.
Maybe. his pee-pee video, yeah. Okay, this one is the video. Okay, hang on. So I got to swap over here to a different method of sharing, but let's open it first. I see this one's from Luke Rodkowski. Oh, okay. I know what this is, Cap. This is a good one. Okay, so this is from Luke Rodkowski.
Yes.
And do you want me to read the tweet first as well from Luke?
Yeah, this is the perfect representation of government help. Now, I wasn't sure if this was 100% real.
Oh, it's real.
It could just be a helicopter fucking around, but I did do some research. This is what Scagz and I were talking about FEMA impeding on volunteers from trying to help in North Carolina.
Yeah, so and for those who are listening, this is what looks like a government helicopter. I'm not sure. It looks like a Black Hawk, and it seems to be hovering above an area where staged and are trying to help out in North Carolina, and it hovers like right above this area and just completely flips tents. So the rotor wash flips things over, damages some of the goods that they have. What is that? What the fuck is that?
And it is a unmarked helicopter. They don't know who it came from. They talked to the FEMA people. They talked to National Guard. It was a no-fly zone. It was a no-drop zone. But a government chopper somehow was able to fly through and screw up this little area.
It looks like a government chopper. Might not be a government chopper. We don't know for certain. It's suspicious though. It really is. It could just also be an idiot, right? Like some idiot asshole thought he was going to land there, and he ends up almost, causing more damage than he could. I don't know, but it's interesting, to say the least. Not many private citizens have U.S. standard issue Black Hawk helicopters, and you think if it's a government trained pilot, right? Again, anarchist here. He'd know that his rotor wash is going to damage the area around where he's trying to land.
They are purposefully screwing this up. The government is and it's all of its many tentacles are so corrupt and so bad at what they do now, and they're so inefficient, they can't even fuck up a situation without red flags going up to show us they're purposely fucking up a situation.
So I know Professor Giordano, he wouldn't go for some of our bigger conspiracy theories. He usually will just chalk it up to they're incompetent. They're not only incompetent, but they're nefarious. So they're nefarious and they're incompetent at the same time. Touche, Professor Giordano. That's what I'd have to say about that. All right, so we got a few more. Do you have any more videos, Cap? Or
no, the other one's just a normal tweet.
It's tight here, folks, because I got a couple actually good ones. My next one is for no, sorry. So this is a double. Sorry, I must have pasted this. My last one is from Martyr Made Daryl Cooper. We talked about recently. Okay, so he is quote tweeting Bad Hombre, who says the Trump interview with Adnan Ross 6 million views. Dr. Phil, 27 million views. Dave Ramsey, 5 million views. Theo Vaughn, 14 million views. So Trump goes on these internet shows, independent shows, and he gets millions and millions of views. And later, Bad Hombre says that how Kamala on Call Her Daddy only got like 100,000 views, which is nothing compared to what
I did not know that. Okay, yeah.
Right, so and there might be a little bit more by now, but it's very low given Call Her Daddy and the stakes there as well compared to Trump. So Martin makes the point. Daryl Cooper makes the point. He goes, such low numbers cannot merely be the result of disinterest. Democrats actively avoid seeing Kamala because they've learned that each encounter makes it harder to pretend she's something other than what she is.
And clap right into the mic. That is great. That somebody I don't know who shared it or where I saw it from, but somebody said, Trump reminds people of their father. He's like a father figure. And, when you're low IQ or you're a bum, your father's probably not proud of you and you don't like your father and you don't have a good relationship with him. Kamala is like the kooky aunt that doesn't care and loves you anyway, even though your life is going nowhere and, you're just plummeting to rock bottom. People don't like to feel bad about themselves, right? And this is a perfect example that she is so bad that it's getting too hard for them to even fake it anymore.
So they'd rather just not know. It's give me the blue pill. I don't want to know nothing.
Stick my head in the sand and I'll pull the lever on election day.
Also, I'm remembering a lot of the Biden voter behavior the past year where they pretended like everything was fine.
Yeah.
But you could tell they weren't happy with him, right? That they were concerned because they knew the deal. As much as they lied, they knew that he has dementia and he's not a good chance of winning the election. But they didn't say anything and they ignored it. I think now what Daryl Cooper here is saying that, look, you could kind of see it in the statistics. A lot of them know she sucks as well.
Yeah.
And they don't want the red pill. They don't want to see how bad she is. So they'd rather just keep lying to themselves and everything's fine. She's great. The campaign of joy. We're going to win. Let's see what happens.
If that's who you are, you're a pathetic human being.
You are too far gone at this point. The captain's last tweet made me laugh off his cue.
Luke Radowski, and it's Homer Simpson looking all demented. Look at me. I don't believe conspiracy theories because my government loves me.
Yeah.
This is what you look like, people. The people who think the government is batting 1,000 and telling the truth. I had a great conversation the other day. I had an old boss. I was working in a different place when Trump got elected, and my boss obviously was not a Trump fan. And she's much older than me. If I was 30, she was 50. She had to at least be 20 years older than me, if not more. And she genuinely, to this day, it still shocks me. I could remember looking at her when she told me this. To this day, she genuinely believes that Donald Trump was so evil and so corrupt that the government was good. And then when they elected him, that's when everybody started lying and doing bad things. Okay. January 20th, 2017, 2016
Yeah.
is when the government became bad in her eyes. She was born probably right at the end of Vietnam. She saw Desert Storm. She's seen the 20-year Iraq War.
Where was she for weapons of mass destruction? Like, you should have used an example like that on her. What do you think? They were telling the truth there on that one? I mean, come on now. Did you forget about that whole thing?
It just,
Probably.
you don't want to believe any of this because your government loves you. You don't hate them enough.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up here, but we actually have an example of this in the comments. Patrick Scott Tanner from Facebook says, so what do you libertarians think that you're going to achieve? Anything? The Jamba the Trump assassination attempt was a complete fake. Touche, Patrick. I don't think us libertarians are really going to accomplish jack shit, to be honest with you. Those people don't really want freedom and liberty. They want safety and security. But we're going to try regardless. But there are people, as you can see here, folks, I'm bringing up this example from a comment who actually do think that the Trump assassination thing was fake. I'm not going to go into another tangent here about all the evidence of how insane it was and the links to the deep state and everything like that. But we've made nuanced, detailed arguments here on this show about it. But then there are people like, no, blue pill, it's all fake. Blah 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 blah. Whatever.
Everybody has the right to their opinion.
Fair enough.
Anywho. On that note, Doom Nation, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Any final words?
Adios.
See you guys later.